Copyright disclaimer. Under Title 17 U.S.C. Section 107, allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, and research. Fair use is permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. Nonprofit, educational, or personal use tips the balance in favor of fair use. Okay, you guys, I thought this would be interesting. So this is free online. U.S. Department of Justice, law enforcement response to child abuse. So I'm going to just peruse through this and see what I find interesting. It says Portable Guide to Investigating Child Abuse. You can download it onto Kindle if you have it. Okay, you guys, clearly I have to read this on my tablet. Law enforcement response to child abuse. And obviously, this supersedes something at a local police agency such as LAPD. Like all the portable guides in the series, it is designed to assist those working to help protect children from being victimized and to improve the investigation of child abuse cases. How about that? This guide arms law enforcement professionals with the information needed to ensure consistency in their investigation of child abuse. Pertinent considerations and helpful investigatory protocols are provided. Other useful materials include suggestions on working with physicians, responding to domestic disturbance calls, and placing children in protective custody. Supplemental readings and additional resources are cited. In protecting our children from criminal predators, law enforcement professionals are serving their communities. Imagine that. And their nation. We hope that this guide will aid in that worthy endeavor. Original printing in May 1997. Child abuse is a community problem. No single agency has a training, manpower, resources, or legal mandate to intervene effectively in child abuse cases. No one agency has the sole responsibility for dealing with abused children. When a child is physically beaten or sexually abused, the ideal set of events is that doctors treat the injuries. Therapists counsel the child. Social services works with the family. Police arrest the offender. And attorneys prosecute the case. To promote this response, effective community intervention involves the formation of a child protection team that includes professionals from medicine, criminal justice, social work, and education who understand and appreciate the different roles, responsibilities, strengths, and weaknesses of the other team members. Yeah, but what if you deny that child their right to therapy? What if you deny that child a right to medical help? Are the officers going to be held responsible if something happens to the child or something else happens? Strengths and weaknesses of the other team members, but corporate and coordinate their efforts. The skill of each person is viewed as different but equally important. How about that, LAPD? The role of law enforcement in child abuse cases is to investigate, to determine if a violation of criminal law occurred. That means a real investigation, not a fake one. Identify and apprehend the offender and file appropriate criminal charges. The response of law enforcement to child abuse needs to be consistent. The intent of this guide is to provide officers who respond to this type of crime with information that will ensure this consistency. It is also to help law enforcement understand the importance of developing procedures and protocols and ways they can work with other professions to ensure that the needs of children are met. State-mandated reporting laws require a referral when there is a suspicion of abuse. Require a referral when there is a suspicion of abuse. In most child abuse cases, law enforcement becomes involved in one of two ways: by a referral from a school, a physician, or an agency such as social services, or by direct call for service from a parent, a child, or a neighbor, because of increased reporting of child abuse, especially when the child said they're trying to kill them. It is critical that police officers be trained to handle cases involving child maltreatment. Child abuse cases have unique characteristics that make them different from other types of cases. For a number of reasons, children make perfect victims. Yeah, they sure do. And it's not police's job to ship the child back to Scientology just like they're a piece of property. That's against protocol. It's against the law. It's not protecting the child, which that is the duty of a police officer, in case you didn't know. Children make perfect victims. Yeah, Scientology would know, wouldn't they? And crimes involving a child abuse, particularly sexual abuse, are among the most difficult investigated by law enforcement. Yeah, when they're investigated. It appears to me, and it's my opinion, that a lot of the children being sexually abused, raped within those Scientology premises are being covered up by police as well. That's my opinion. That's what it appears to be. Are among the most difficult investigated by law enforcement. Children are usually unable to protect themselves. Yeah, that's why they go to police. Because of their level of physical and mental development. Yeah, because they're not children in adults. They're not adults in child bodies. Frequently, they do not like to talk about the abuse. Yeah, it takes a lot of courage to speak out about it. They may delay disclosure or tell only part of the story. An emotional bond often exists between the child and the offender. Children may want the abuse to stop, but they may not want the offender to be punished. Okay, I'm going to skip to what are the exact procedures that police officers are supposed to follow. And this supersedes local police procedures. So I'm just going to touch on just part of this. Because you see, if the police officers are prohibiting medical professionals from getting involved, they're actually not, they are not following police procedure, as well as they are not completing the duties of a police officer. So right here, I'm just going to touch on the bullet points. It says before that, all players on the child protection team. Well, if you're not allowing the child to talk with a social worker or a therapist or a doctor, that means you are inhibiting that child's rights to actually being protected. So next time, if there's child advocates watching, try your best to get the child's name, because if the child gives you their name, then you can help. You can intercede where the police are not doing their jobs. All players on the child protection team must have clearly defined roles in order to carry out their responsibilities effectively. Yeah, that doesn't mean that a Scientologist can abuse their child heinously and get taken back to the compound. That means you're not, as a police officer, fulfilling your responsibilities. An interagency protocol helps in establishing written guidelines for those who investigate cases of child abuse and neglect. Yeah, it's not your job to impede the Child Protective Services from coming in. As a police officer, it's not your job to impede a doctor from seeing the child. And you never know. It could be possible that the young teenage girl, you just never know. That child may have been raped. They may be pregnant. So it's good for that child who's been raped to get prenatal care if they choose to keep the child. That's their decision. That's the child's decision, whether she wants to keep the baby. And also further evidence to prove who the perpetrator was. In case you didn't know, that's physical evidence. I know it's hard to wrap your head around it, but, So, this is the second bullet. A properly drafted agreement also provides a blueprint for each of the principal agencies responsible for abuse cases in the community. Yeah, don't be aiding and abetting in child abuse. That goes for police or whomever's involved. It's against the law. Establishing law enforcement protocols and procedures. With their legal authority to investigate violations, that means really investigate. Don't pretend investigate. Violations of the law. Yeah, especially when Scientologists are clearly out in the open breaking laws that people can actually, citizens are witnessing this. And as far as I could see, DOA was a witness to the abuse that child was enduring when she's screaming, "He's trying to kill me." Law enforcement officers are vital members of the community's child protection team. Oh, God help us. Failure to respond properly to child abuse cases from the outset, e.g. failure of the responding law enforcement officer to obtain certain information. What about if the police officer is impeding the investigation? Can result in cases being dismissed in court. Isn't that the point, Scientology? But you guys don't have a problem with a little girl who's stating they're trying to kill her. And, it's a possibility that she's being sexually abused as well. We don't know. We're not there. And then you police officers are not fulfilling your police duties, sending her back to Scientology to get ethics handled when she's being abused. Okay, I'm going to go to the next page, see what they got to say. Okay, we all know that you need to know the language. We get that. But maybe we should go over it. Must be familiar with highly specialized technical terms such as subdural hematoma. Even I know what that means. Disassociation. Yeah, that's from heinous abuse where the child's personality, their psyche splits into a different alter. How about that? Even I know that. Battered child syndrome and pedophilia. LAPD, in case you didn't know, pedophilia is rampant in Scientology. So if you didn't know, now you know. Oh, listen to this. Other terms people should be familiar with to include police officers. Molestation and rape, those are crimes. So if you didn't know that they're crimes, those are crimes. And you as a police officer are supposed to fulfill your duties and go after the perpetrator, not protect them. Crazy, isn't it? Okay, we've heard LAPD tweet this a million times. Okay, considerations for child abuse investigations. When you receive the referral, identify personal or professional biases with child abuse cases. No, what they have is bias for Scientology to abuse children. The word on the street or word on the curb is that some of these police officers are Scientologists. So that would mean they're sending them to their handler Scientologist cops, which is completely biased, which is against all police procedures. Identify personal or professional biases with child abuse cases. Develop the ability to desensitize yourself to those issues and maintain an objective stance. LAPD, you should look into that. Because when children are being abused, whether physically, whether neglected, or being raped by grown men, That's a crime. And you're not allowed to protect perpetrators. That's against your best interest as well as the public's, to include dereliction of duty. No department guidelines and state statutes. Yeah, not L. Ron Hubbard policy, because L. Ron Hubbard policy is not law. Okay, this is kind of just basic information. I'm trying to find out where they got step 1, step 2 of what the procedures are. Okay, I'm going to go through this because the considerations, they have some good things in here. Know what resources are available in the community, therapy, victim, compensation, etc. That doesn't mean send an abused child that was escaping with her life to the neighbors. That doesn't mean sending the child back to the perpetrators. That means you're aiding and abetting in crimes. And other outside agencies are starting to watch what you're doing. So you have to follow police procedures. You can't go outside of it. It's not allowed to do that. And provide the information to the child's family. But if the child's family are the perpetrators, you don't aid and abet with those perpetrators. Because if the family's a perpetrator, you can't aid and abet with them. Introduce yourself, your role, and the focus and objective of the investigation. Yeah, it's important to know that your role is to protect the child. So I'm just giving you a little reminder, friendly reminder. Assure that the best treatment will be provided for the protection of the child. That means you don't send the abused child back to the perpetrators and help to cover up the abuse. Because that's making you a perpetrator now, in case you didn't understand that. I'm just explaining. Interview the child alone. Yeah, that means don't have the handler with the child. You know, the one that's trying to kill her? Don't have the perpetrator with the child when she's trying to talk to you, while he's trying to discredit DOA. Someone was calling DOA that he had mental issues, but yet inside these Scientology walls, they're calling children adults in small bodies, making the children work from 6 in the morning till 10 o'clock at night, making the children go to ethics training to include toddlers, making the children sign affidavits and contracts for 1 billion years, telling them they're out ethics, that they're not producing enough. That alone is child abuse. They're calling DOA mentally incapacitated. They are the ones that are incapacitated, working children. How many hours is that? Like 10, 18-hour days for children? That's mentally incapacitated. I've got a social work degree, but I didn't get my master's. All you have to do is look it up on Google. I am not diagnosing anyone. It's common knowledge. Just look it up. Don't rule out the possibility of child abuse with a domestic dispute complaint. Talk with the children at the scene. Oh, and also, too, even though I'm not a police officer, I know that you're supposed to get witness statements. So, Scotty was a witness. There were several of the child advocates out there that were witnesses to the crime. That means that you as a police officer are required to take those witness statements. If you don't take those witness statements, that's dereliction of duty. Getting information for the preliminary report. That means taking all witness statements. Inquire about the history of the abusive situation. Dates are important to set the timeline for when the abuse may have occurred. Also, too, I imagine you have a special unit in Los Angeles to handle child abuse, and protocol would be automatically called Child Protective Services. You don't not call them. The child needs medical care, you call the doctor in. You get an ambulance. This is going to be looked at. Cover the elements of crime necessary for the report. Yeah, don't minimize it. And like the cop did with the DV, the other one that I read the other day. The cop just was saying, "Oh, it's a he said, she said." No, don't minimize it, because the child could end up dead if you act like that. In case you didn't know. Inquire about the instrument of abuse or other items on the scene. Yeah, and she should have gotten a pregnancy test just as a protocol. I mean, I'm just saying, like, maybe that was not happening, but just so you can gather evidence, that should have been like a go-to. Automatic. Also proof of sexual abuse, if that was in fact occurring. Don't discount children's statements. Like when the child says somebody's trying to kill her, like her stepfather or her father, believe her. About who is abusing them. So that means all the Scientologists that are abusing that child need to go on record. It needs to be written in your police report. And even though it was a long, long time ago, when I was a military police person, I wrote police reports. On or about this date, X person, Jane Doe, states John Doe raped her. On or about this time, Jane Doe states another Jane Doe slapped her in the face. That's how it's done. Save opinions for the end of the report. Like, yeah, the minimizing opinions, that's not fact. So what you have to do is you have to gather factual information. Just because you love the Scientologists and they're paying you probably millions of dollars or probably a lot of in-kind gifts, which by law you're supposed to report the in-kind gifts. That's required by law. Any kind of car that's given to you, or maybe they're purchasing women for you, whatever it is, you guys have to report that. If you don't report that, you could be in trouble. Saving opinions for the end of the report and provide supportive facts. Yeah, supportive facts, like when Scotty / also known as DOA was giving you guys information, those are supportive facts. Highlight the atmosphere of disclosure and the mood and demeanor of participants in the complaint. If you didn't take all those witness statements, it's going to look really bad for you. Preserving the crime scene. Treat this scene as a crime scene, even if abuse has occurred in the past, and not at the site of the social problem. That would include getting statements from the neighbors where the child ran to. You don't get to pick and choose in investigatory factual information. Secure the instrument of abuse or other corroborative evidence that the child identifies at the scene. Photograph the scene and, when appropriate, include any injuries to the child. Rephotograph injuries as needed to capture any changes in appearance. It's kind of looking like, since you guys don't really want to do your police duties, that maybe citizens need to start doing that. Perhaps the citizens could start taking photographs of the bruises on the children, since you guys are kind of refusing to do your police duties. That's what it's looking like, and that's my opinion. I'm entitled to my opinion. I'm a citizen of the United States, and we are entitled to have opinions in this country. Follow-up investigation. Be supportive and optimistic to the child and the family, unless the family are the perpetrators. And by protocol, you should have called her birth mother immediately, because the word on the curb was that the child, her parents have dual custody. So you're not allowed to help that father steal his child away from the mother. That means you're aiding and abetting in crimes. Arrange for medical examination. How about that, you guys? Arrange for a medical examination is in the Department of Justice's procedure. But for some reason, LAPD didn't want to do that. Isn't that funny? They didn't want to follow police procedure. And transportation to the hospital. So it turns out DOA, otherwise known as Scotty, was correct. So you were denying that little girl her rights. You were denying that little girl her right to medical help. And also to privacy. So if she wanted to report something in private, to those medical professionals, you disallowed her from having her rights taken away from her by you. You did not allow her the right to medical care. You could be charged for that. Collect items for a change of clothes if needed. Yeah, you didn't protect that child, and that's what she needed. Make use of appropriate investigative techniques. How about that, you guys? That means you can't be a Scientology sympathizer or help them in aiding and abetting in crimes. Be sure the child and family have been linked to support services or therapy. Be sure the family knows how to reach a detective to disclose further information. Well, we better find out that a detective was called in, someone that's not linked to Scientology, or perhaps cops that are from out of state. Maybe that's what's needed right now. Cops that are not paid off by Scientology, that are not safe pointed. During the court phase, visit the court with the child to familiarize him or her with the courtroom setting and atmosphere before the hearing. That means you can't be on the side of the perpetrator, police officers. This role may be assumed by the prosecutor or, in some jurisdictions, by victim witness services. Yeah, see, like all those witnesses that there, it seems like you guys didn't want to listen. That means that you're evading your police duties by not wanting to listen to the victim statements. Or no, not the victim statements, but the witness statements. Prepare courtroom exhibits. Pictures, displays, sketches to support the child's testimony. Yeah, not the perpetrator testimony. In case you didn't know. File all evidence in accordance with state and court policy. Don't worry, we're going to be looking at those policies. We're going to be looking at those policies to make sure that you're following them. Because that's what you're supposed to do as a police officer, is to follow the laws and the policies. You're not supposed to be protecting a multi-billion-dollar corporation that is built on systemic mass abuse of children. Unless they are suspects. Facts. Unless they are suspects like the father was. In case you didn't want to label him as a suspect, that was what he was. Update the family about the status and progress of the investigation and stay in touch with them throughout the court process. Depending on the case, officers should be cautious about the type and amount of information provided to the family. Facts. Facts. Because guess what? Abusing children in the United States of America is illegal. It's illegal. Since they may share the information with others. Exactly. Follow up with the probation department for preparation of the presentence report and victim impact statements. Oh gosh, you guys are going to love this one. Working with the medical profession and LAPD, I'm addressing you guys. Can get mad all day. You guys have procedures and protocols to follow. Get mad all day long. Physicians can be important allies in the prevention and treatment of child abuse. Turns out DOA was right, huh? Scotty was right. Somebody with mental health issues trying to say that Scotty has mental health issues when Scotty was trying to protect the child. Doctors can serve as family counselors and educators, as influential child advocates. Wow, how about that word, guys? And as key members of the community multidisciplinary team. Yeah, instead of laughing at DOA when you see that he's having a panic attack. Because that's on film. It was in very poor taste. He's the one trying to protect children, not you guys. And as key members of the community multidisciplinary team. Yeah, that doesn't mean Scientology's fake medical, what do they call them, officers? Those people have no medical credentials whatsoever. In case you didn't know, why don't you just look up Lisa McPherson? Or the other ongoing case right now. Oh, what's her name? trying to think of her name. I can't think of it right now, but there was another lady that committed suicide, and it's an Mills. Ongoing case right now, police officers. You should look it up. If you guys are not careful, you guys are going to wind up in trouble. I'm not threatening. I'm only saying if you guys are not following police procedures and protocols, you could end up getting in some trouble. That's all I'm saying. Doctors can serve as family counselors and educators. So it kind of looked like you guys denied medical care to a child that's being abused. It's not looking good. As influential child advocates and as key members of the community multidisciplinary team, they can help to alleviate stress on a family by managing health problems, providing child rearing advice. That will go on deaf ears in Scientology. None of them have any common sense. In discussing family planning alternatives. In cases of suspected child maltreatment, doctors have 5 basic responsibilities to identify suspicious injuries. Is that why you didn't want her to go to the doctor, Mr. Police Officer? Is that why you didn't want her to go? Because it might be in black and white that she's being abused? It's kind of looking like cover-up right now. It's not looking too good. To diagnose problems of abuse. So the doctor could have diagnosed problems of abuse. Is that what you were trying to prevent, Mr. Police Officer? To administer treatment to the child. To report suspected incidents of abuse to the appropriate authorities. So it turns out Sergeant Omar was correct. To testify in subsequent legal proceedings. Unfortunately, some physicians are reluctant to get involved in cases of abuse. For example, they may find few personal or professional rewards in dealing with an abusive family. Okay. Wow, check this out, LAPD. Wow, looks like you guys are messing up out there. Obtaining a medical examination. This is from Department of Justice, by the way. Turns out Department of Justice kind of knows what is supposed to be done. In most cases, yeah, and also, it could also be construed as preventing evidence from being submitted. That's what it could be construed as. In most cases, a medical assessment of the child needs to be performed as soon as possible. So you guys laughing at DOA, it really wasn't so funny, is it? DOA was telling you guys she needs an examination. The primary purposes of the medical examination are to assess potential injury and identify the need for treatment. Such an examination will also protect law enforcement against accusations that a child's injuries occurred after removal from the home. Whenever possible, all children suspected of having been abused should be given a medical examination, preferably by a medical professional. Yeah, not a medical officer of Scientology, because they have no credentials. Preferably by a medical professional experienced and trained in conducting forensic examinations. See, that could be evidence retrieval right there. You didn't want evidence retrieval, Mr. Police Officer? Because that's kind of what it's looking like. This is critical in cases in which sexual abuse is alleged. Facts. Facts. Like a rape kit. How many rape kits was it at LAPD that were lost? Or they weren't lost, I think actually maybe they were lost, but they couldn't find them or some weird thing. Sounds like evidence cover-up. It's on the record, you guys. Just look at public record. This is critical in cases in which sexual abuse is alleged. The medical professional should reassure the child who may be fearful about the procedure and concerned about the physical and emotional consequences of the abuse. A secondary purpose of a medical examination is to determine the presence of any corroborating evidence of acute or chronic trauma. How about that, LAPD? It looked like you didn't want to get evidence collected. It's kind of how it's looking. What's that about? In recent years, the ability and willingness of doctors to corroborate child abuse has improved greatly. Better training, the establishment of protocols, and technological advancements have improved the ability of doctors to corroborate physical and sexual abuse in children. How crazy is that? You guys know that there's various forms of physical evidence, which I won't get into in detail on YouTube, that can be collected to prove that sexual abuse did occur. So no more accusations of false memories, because that's tired. Medical imaging technology now available, including magnetic resonance imaging, MRI, computed tomography, CT, that I am aware of, and colposcopes, an instrument with magnification capabilities for visualizing the interior of a hollow organ, such as the blank or blank, you guys can guess. So, turns out they can get evidence, you guys. So, you should be real careful of how you handle these cases from now on. To document the examination results. Unless in case you're sympathetic to people who do this to children, and there's quite a few documented cases of police officers that have sexually abused children. I'm not saying you particularly did that, but if you're not doing your job, it's looking real shady. Interviewing the victim. Assess the medical needs of the child. Okay, determine venue. So I'm going to jump to the bullets. Obtaining a medical examination. Oh, wait, let me read the whole thing. Note, if a sexual assault occurred within the previous 72 hours, the medical examination should be performed as soon as possible to maximize the possibility of recovering certain forensic evidence. So any of you Scientology pedophiles, you should listen to this. We're watching you very closely. And you should be a little fearful because people on the outside don't like men or women that rape children. It's very well known. Should be performed as soon as possible to maximize the possibility of recovering certain forensic evidence, such as blood, semen, saliva, and trace evidence. If the assault occurred more than 72 hours before, the probability of this type of evidence being recovered is reduced. However, since the investigator cannot be absolutely sure when the last encounter was, it is prudent to schedule the medical examination sooner rather than later. A physician and/or nurse examiner conducts the examination. Contact a physician and/or sexual assault nurse examiner. Coordinate with CPS to determine if you, the police investigator, or the CPS worker will accompany the child to the examination. Meet with the CPS representative. You guys know CPS has been infiltrated as well, right? I can't get into detail. The physician and/or nurse examiner the child and the parent or guardian at the hospital treatment room. Assist the child and parents or guardian with the procedures for admission to the emergency room. CPS may provide this assistance depending on who has requested the examination. Brief medical personnel concerning the facts, allegations, suspect information. That would have been the father or that stepfather. The mental state of the child, past histories, and what the police department and CPS are looking for in the examination and what evidence is to be collected. Handling the evidence. Unless you impede the evidence collection, Mr. Police Officers. See the cultures are prepared and marked to maintain the chain of custody. Include the date, the initials of the person conducting the examination, and the child's name. Transport the cultures and all other materials collected for evidence to the state laboratory. Make sure that both you and the laboratory personnel have signed the chain of custody form. Local procedures may differ from this law. From this law, enforcement must know and follow all jurisdictional procedures. LAPD, that means you too. For handling evidence, make sure the photographs are marked with the date, time, victim's name, photographer's initials, and case number and turned over to you as evidence. Photographs can be taken by police officers investigators, CPS workers, physicians, nurse examiners, and other parties. Okay, I'm going to pause it there. I'm going to have a part 2. I will leave the link in the description box. Like and subscribe if you choose. Otherwise, have an amazing day or night wherever you are. Peace.